Good afternoon. This is the Devar Torah on Parshat Balak, which in Eretz Israel will be read this week and will be read next week in Chutz La'aretz outside of Israel. The Parsha begins with the following pasuk: Yireh Balak ben Sipor, Kol Asher Mamari. And Balak the son of Sipor saw all that Israel had done to the Amorite. It says Moab became very frightened. Yigam Moab mifnei ha'am shemod ki yichutz, Kates Moab mifnei b'nei Israel. It was numerous, frightened of the people because it was numerous, and Moab was discussed in the face of the children of Israel. Now, interestingly enough, even though the Jewish people were not allowed to destroy Moab by God's commandment, because Moab was a nation that descended from one of the two daughters of Lot, and their father. In any event, they were still frightened. Now, on the other hand, they wrote to another nation called the Midianites, who until that time had been sworn enemies and at war with each other. But in the interest of destroying the Jewish people, at least trying to harm them, they were going to unite themselves. Now they went to Bilam, who was the had many skills. In fact, he among the many skills he had was Bilam he was both a magician and he used the forces of dark magic, of the dark forces of Klipot, the spiritual impurities, to command power. He was also a philosopher. He was good at speaking. Not only could he curse people, nations, they paid him fortunes to curse their enemies. And Balak, though Bilam could curse the Jewish people, not realizing that, like the other nations, Israel, the Jewish people, were under the hands of direct hand of Hashem, and therefore nothing Bilam could do could affect it, the nation of Israel. In any event, Balak was hopeful. When the elders of Midian and Moab came together, and the reason Moab was frightened, they still felt overwhelmed by the Jewish nation. Now, Bilam said, I could only go if God commanded me. He couldn't go, and therefore he couldn't go. And then Balak kept sending more and more deputies, higher and higher level delegations, as we call it today, until finally Bilam again asked God, can I go? God said yes. It came to him in a prophetic dream. Now, interestingly enough, Bilam at this time had only been able to give work his curses by the powers of the dark forces. Some would describe it as magic, not magic in the sense we have it today, but truth tapping into dark forces. And God said you go with, but you can only say what I command you. Now, God realized that Bilam was being false, and what he had every intention of doing was cursing the Jewish people. He then confronted the donkey. He then went out the donkey saw this angel with a fiery sword, which Balaam did not. And he diverted away from the path of the angel. She diverted the donkey away from the path of the angel. And the angel then blocked the path in another direction. And finally, the donkey laid down because they saw there was no path forward. And one question is brought is why, since the angel didn't ultimately wind up killing Balaam, why did he have to be there all? And it's explained that his powers of magic, his powers of spiritual impurity were so strong that later when the Jewish people in Parshat Balak confront him in the Midianite nation, they would not have been able to destroy his power. Only because it was weakened by the angel could the Moshe and the Bnei Israel succeed in the battle against Balaam. Now, Balaam then has a miracle because there's a confrontation. What is this confrontation? This confrontation is between him and a donkey. Now, this sounds a little unusual, but nevertheless, it occurred. And Balaam got into an argument with his own donkey. God gave him this power of speech. When did the donkey get the power to speak? Hashem had created that at the end, towards the end of the sixth day of creation, just before Hashem confronted him, just before Hashem created Shabbat. And then, in that occurrence, there was the following dialogue. Then went something like this. The donkey, she complained to Balaam, what I have done that you deserve to be beaten 3 times, because since Balaam did not see the angel, he thought the donkey was just being difficult. Now, he was so mad, he wasn't amazed by it. The people that accompanied him thought it was incredible. And he said, Balaam back, you made a fool of me. If only I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you now. And he was looking for a weapon. The female donkey then said back, apparently you cannot destroy me without a sword, and yet find a way to wipe out an entire nation with words. Now, the princes of Moab who went with him were amazed by this whole confrontation that had accompanied Balaam, and the princes began to laugh. Look, the man, he concerned an entire people with only words, and now he's frantically searching for a sword to kill his she-donkey. This hit Balaam's pride, and he was an extremely arrogant individual. And they asked him, the princes, why do you ride a she-donkey that does not obey you? She does not belong to me, I borrowed to explain Balaam. The donkey says, not true, I am your she-donkey. However, she's not used to counting people, Balaam said, just loads. No, she said, I am used to you riding me. Perhaps I used you once, Balaam evaded. She-donkey corrected him. You always rule me by the day and use me for other purposes at night. That ever I consume a matter as long as you know me, you didn't. Now then, it's interesting that Balaam was the wisest man in the nations. He cannot answer his own donkey's reproof. And then Balaam, his eyes were opened by Hashem, and he saw the fiery angel. And then he said, if you truly don't want me to go, I'll turn back. The angel said, you can go, but you can only speak what I tell you. That's what God said. What happened at that point? What happened at that point was that he went there. Balaam was greeted by Balak. And now Balak showed him where to offer the sacrifices. It was Balaam who was actually going to do the cursing, and they had complementary abilities, which I'll discuss a little later. Then what happens after that? Then it gets even more amazing. After failing 3 times to curse the Jewish people, instead it turns into the positive statements. Balaam, who sees that it's good in the eyes of Hashem to praise the Jewish people, then goes on to predict what's not only gives him a blessing, but predicts what's going to happen at the end of days. Now, what's going to happen at the end of days, which means Zman Mashiach. There are some interesting verses there, which go on like this. And the following dialogue goes. He makes a number of statements predicting the future, which I will come back to later in the Torah. In any event, Balak is furious that Balaam cannot succeed. Then there is the final incident of the Parsha, where the nation, many instances, a trap for the people, Jewish people. What they do is they send their beautiful women, who are all idol worshippers, out to seduce the Jewish men. And what they do is they tell them that in order for you to be able to perform an immoral act with us, you must first see our idols. They tell them to do something which to the men of Israel looks like a desecration, but is actually the way that they worship this God. A plague then breaks out. The daughters of Moab, and 24,000 people die in the plague. I will speak more about this next week, because the story of so what happens is Pinchas, when all the Jewish people are paralyzed, an immoral act is being completed with one of the princes of the tribe of Shimon, Zimri, and they confront Cosby, and this with Cosby. Pinchas takes a spear, spears the both of them, lifts them up so the nation can see. The plague stops, and there is 24th, and the miracle is they only until he throws down the spear, they're still alive. And because Pinchas was about to become a Kohen, a priest, and exposure to the dead would disqualify him temporarily till he purified himself. So Hashem made a special miracle. They stayed alive long enough. Now, again, on this subject, I will be speaking next week, and next week's Parsha, which continues Pinchas. What I would like to focus on now, the two characters, Balak and Balaam, who are going to be instrumental in this Parsha, which is also unusual because the people themselves, Jewish people, have only come in at the last first few verses of the whole entire Parsha. Now, who are Balaam and who is Balak? Now, looking on a more basic level, Balak is referred to as Balak ben Zippor, which literally means son of a bird. Now, what is it talking about there? One of the things it's talking about was the magic powers of impurity of the Avodah Zarah the Balak had. What was in this case? By manipulating the dark forces of Tumah, they created birds that reveal the secrets of the future. How do they do? They may become a nation of minerals, gold for its head, silver for its beak, copper for its wings, and so on. And the symbol parts at a certain hour of the day. He inserted in the mouth of they inserted in these powers of Tumah in the mouth of the tongue of a living bird. That's what they put in. They put it on the windowsill 7 days and faced the sun and the moon. And the bird's tongue began to make a tinkling sound. Then the magician pierced it with a golden needle and the bird began to talk. Now, that's why the name Zippor meant Balak, who could divine the secret means of a magic bird. Now, one day he did the same thing, except the bird flew away. He came back later, followed by fiery flame, and that was the they say the power of the Shekhinah, Hashem's divine presence, showed that even Hashem would triumph over the worst forces of impurity. Now, why did Balak call for Balaam? He had such powers. Why didn't he just curse the Jews himself? Because, among other things, and why did he respect Balaam so much? One of the reasons that's given that he respected Balaam was that Balaam predicted that Balak would become king. And also, as I said, Balaam was incredible with words. Like they say, in terms of being able to speak well and speaking with influence, he was the supposed equal of Moshe Rabbeinu in that area of speech. And the two needed each other, even though they were both had wisdom, a lot of wisdom, used for perverted causes, but they had a lot of wisdom. And not only did they have a lot of wisdom, they also were masterful magicians. Now, Balaam and Balak needed each other. Why? Because Balak could speak, had magic powers of Tumah, but what did he do? He knew from exactly what location one had to speak to use the power of curses of impurity against somebody. Balaam did not have that skill set. However, what Balaam knew how to do was how to use the powers of Tumah to curse. So they were complementing each other. Now, looking at Balaam a little further, Balaam resembled Moshe in that one aspect of speech. However, he did not represent Balaam in purity in any other way. In fact, in the Mishnah, in Pirkei Avos, in the 5th chapter, says, Kol yemei sheyesh biyado shlosh devarim halu et metalmidim shel Avraham Avinu, shlosh devarim acherim hu melamnidav shel Bilam harasha. And those followed 3 traits were among Midot, were among the disciples of our forefather Abraham, and whoever had 3 different traits is among the disciples of the wicked Bilam. Now, what were the good qualities? Ayin Tov, Ruach, Nemuka, and Nefesh Shafala. El Meshavrim Avinu. What were they? A good eye, a humble spirit, and a meek soul. Those are disciples of Abraham. Now those, and the meekness was definitely emulated in Moshe, and Ayin Ra, evil eye, and Ruach Kavua, and Nefesh Rachava, Tadim Shel Bilam Harasha. And those who have an evil eye, an evil spirit, an arrogant spirit, and a greedy soul are among disciples of Bilam. Then goes on to explain how did Abraham differ from the disciples of Bilam. Well, the answer he gives is Abraham enjoys the fruits of good deeds in this world and inherits the world to come, where he'll get the Keren, the primary reward, as it is said in Tehillim. Cause those who love me to inherit everlasting possession, world to come, and they will fill their houses, storehouses in this world. Now, interestingly enough, the quotes, next quote on Bilam is, of Psalms, is also mentioned in the Hadran when somebody finishes a tractate of the Talmud. They say a special declaration, and it then says, but the disciples of Bilam, wicked Bilam, inherit Gehenna and descend into the well of destruction. And how do they know that? About tel minim shel Bilam, Rashi Yorshim, Gehenna, the place where people are punished. Yarden Be'er Shachat, the well of destruction. Shenamar Atam Elokim Toredeim, Labia Shachat, Anshi Damin, Mirma, Lo Yatsu, Mehem, Ani Betach Lavah. And you, O God, shall lower them into the well of destruction, men of bloodshed and deceive. Deceit shall not devour half the days, but as for me, I will trust you. Now, in addition to that, Abraham was given 10 tests to see if he was truly loyal and loved Hashem. So was Bilam. However, as Aderes Alayel, the Vilna Gaon's statement, Sefer. Now, God tested Bilam with 10 tests. Abraham passed all of them with flying colors. His test, Bilam failed all of them. What were these tests? When God told Bilam, do not go with Balak's messengers, he should have obeyed without asking again. Hashem said, you can go provided you do not curse the Jews, being left with the intention of cursing them. When the Shias turned from the donkey into the donkey, from the path into the field, Bilam ignored it. She pressed his foot against the wall. He still ignored the warning. She crouched down under him, but rather than reflecting, he hit her. The donkey then spoke. He was not impressed by the miracle. He became aware of the angel, but had still not repented sincerely. He built altars in the place of Mama's Pal, thinking to bribe Hashem. He built altars and sacrificed on the second hill of Rosh Pisgah. He sacrificed on the hill Rosh Be'er. Thus Bilam protested against and rebelled against Hashem 10 times. Now, on a deeper level, who are Balak and Bilam? Now, if you look very interestingly in their names, they and this is based on Shah HaPosukim and Sefer Likutei Torah, that why was he called Balak ben Sipor? As I explained, because he had the powers of Husim, black magic, Aidei Sipor, and he had a great hatred of the Jewish people. And who is he connected to? He's connected to Amalek, because if you look at the name of Baal, and so was Bilam. If you look at the first three letters of the spelling of Amalek, Ayin, Mem, Kuf, Lamed Kuf, the first three letters of Mal, they are the letters, three of the letters in the name of Bilam, and it represents the resembling of Amalek, which we'll get back to in a second. And that was Amalek. Now, what about Balak? Well, Balak, he had the Kuf. Last letter of his name is Kuf. And he was also a descendant of his. Now, looking at it a little further, what did the two of them represent? The two of them represented evil. One of them was a descendant of Cain, one of Adam and Rishon's first two sons, and the other one was a representative of Hevel. Except what did they do? Balak took the negative qualities and the negative aspects of Neshama of Cain, and Hevel and Bilam took the other one. So between the two of them, they represented an incredible mixture of evil and Balak and Bilam both represented that. Now it says that his name was Balak ben Sipor. Now, who was he a descendant of? Is then Balak ben Sipor ben Yithro. So he was in fact a descendant of Yithro. However, he took over the bad qualities of Yithro. Who took over the positive side was another Sipora, who was one of the daughters of Yithro and became Moshe Rabbeinu's wife. And therefore, he had the Shema of Cain in English, and however, he took the bad aspects. Now, even though he was given Nevuah by Hashem to serve certain purposes, he was an inherently evil man. Now, and in fact, he was a descendant of he had a hair like Amalek, and he had the influence of Nahor, and therefore he was a descendant of Gilgal of Laban. Without going into all the lineage, it's expressed in the Pasuk. Now, Bilam represented was from the Neshama, was a Gilgal of Hevel. However, he took the bad aspects. Moshe had the good aspects of Hevel, and he mastered those and became an incredible individual, while Bilam used all of the negative aspects. Now, later on, in the Parsha, there's going to be further predictions about Amalek, and which both Bilam and Balak were involved with. They represented both aspects of evil. And in a forthcoming Devar Torah, I will be speaking more about the prophecies of Bilam about the end of days, and also the whole answer to Pinchas. Now, we learn from this, despite all these powers of Tumah, and this is something that's we should take as positive, Hashem still loved us. He cared for us, made sure all the curses of Bilam actually became out as brachas, and we both triumph over all enemies of Hashem's people, and may we merit the predictions of Bilam. Good Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom.